Lieutenant Anthony Shaw's spine erupts in searing agony as an alien healer's hands hover inches from his skin. He grits his teeth, wondering how a routine diplomatic mission aboard the Terran starship Odyssey led to this moment of desperation. Hours earlier, Shaw collapses on the bridge, lower back seized by excruciating pain. The ship's doctor runs every test in her arsenal, baffled by the mysterious condition. Captain Elena Rodriguez paces anxiously, watching her officer writhe on the medbay bed. With no other options, she makes the call. "Hey, Rodriguez. This is Captain Rodriguez of the Odyssey. We have a medical emergency, requesting immediate assistance." The nearby Sakari medical frigate responds within minutes. Their lead healer, Gaia, teleports aboard moments later. She glides into medbay, iridescent skin shimmering under harsh lights. Large, mesmerizing eyes scan Shaw's rigid form. "I will examine him," Gaia states, voice melodic yet authoritative. The human medical staff step back, allowing the Sakari access. Gaia closes her eyes, slender hands passing over Shaw's body without touching. A frown creases her ethereal features. "A rare space-borne parasite affects his nervous system," she announces. "Your technology cannot detect it." Captain Rodriguez leans forward. "Can you treat it?" Gaia nods. "There is one method, a specialized healing technique, an energy massage, if you will." Shaw locks eyes with his captain, silently pleading. Rodriguez gives a curt nod. "Do it," Shaw rasps. Gaia places her palms millimeters from Shaw's lower back. A tingling sensation floods his body, intensifying rapidly. Suddenly, his muscles spasm. The medical staff gasp as Shaw's body visibly changes before their eyes. Alarms blare. Shaw's biceps bulge, straining against his uniform. His legs lengthen, feet dangling off the bed's edge. Within minutes, the lieutenant towers over his fellow crewman, muscle mass dramatically increased. "What's happening?" Rodriguez demands, face pale with shock. Before Gaia can respond, security officers burst in, weapons drawn. They surround the Sakari healer as nurses rush to restrain the still-growing Shaw. "Cease treatment immediately," Rodriguez orders. "Gaia, step away from the patient." The Sakari protests, "This is an unforeseen reaction. Human physiology is—" "Silence," Rodriguez cuts her off. "Guards, detain her. We need to understand what's been done to my officer." As Gaia is led away, Shaw's enhanced senses kick in. The medbay's sterile scent overwhelms him. He hears the rapid heartbeats of everyone in the room. With a flex of his arm, the restraints strain ominously. "Captain," he calls out, voice deeper than before. "I feel different, stronger." Rodriguez approaches cautiously. "Lieutenant, what's happening to you?" Shaw's gaze drifts to Gaia's retreating form. An inexplicable attraction pulses through him, beyond mere physical desire. He senses a connection, as if the Sakari's energy lingers within him, unlocking hidden potential. "I don't know," he admits, "but I think Gaia's treatment was working." The captain's brow furrows. She glances between her transformed officer and the detained Sakari healer. The decision weighs heavily. Continue a treatment with unknown consequences or leave Shaw vulnerable to the parasite's insidious effects. As if sensing her dilemma, Shaw adds, "Captain, I can feel the parasite weakening. Whatever Gaia did, it's working. We need to let her finish." Rodriguez hesitates, the fate of her officer hanging in the balance. The diplomatic implications of detaining a Sakari healer war with her duty to protect her crew. She takes a deep breath, knowing her next words will change everything. "Release the Sakari healer," Captain Rodriguez commands, her voice strained but resolute. "We'll continue the treatment under strict supervision." The security team hesitates, exchanging wary glances before lowering their weapons. Gaia approaches Shaw's bed with measured steps, her iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh medbay lights. "Seal off the medical bay," Rodriguez orders. "No one enters or leaves without my explicit authorization." As the doors hiss shut, Gaia resumes her position beside Shaw. Her slender hands hover millimeters above his skin, energy pulsing between them. Shaw's muscles tense, his back arching off the bed as the invisible force courses through him. Dr. Hill's eyes dart between his patient and the array of medical displays. Captain, I'm detecting unprecedented changes in the lieutenant's physiology. His muscle density is increasing exponentially, and there's a surge of activity in his neural pathways. Rodriguez watches from behind a hastily erected containment field, her squeezing hard as she grips the edge of a nearby console. Shaw, report. What are you experiencing? Shaw's voice comes out deeper, resonant. It's intense, Captain. The pain is subsiding, but I feel changed. His eyes snap open, pupils dilating as he scans the room. I can hear the guards outside. I can see the individual fibers in Dr. Hill's uniform. As Gaia's hands move along Shaw's body, his skin begins to take on a subtle, opalescent sheen. The restraints holding him to the bed creak ominously. Suddenly, alarms blare throughout the medbay. Dr. Hill's fingers fly across his console. The parasite is dying off rapidly, but Shaw's DNA, it's mutating. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Gaia, Rodriguez calls out, her tone sharp. Explain. Now. The Sakari healer doesn't break her concentration, her melodic voice floating above the cacophony of alarms. Our healing technique involves a symbiotic exchange. In non-Sakari species, the results can be unpredictable. Before Rodriguez can respond, a loud snap echoes through the room. Shaw sits up, the shredded remains of his restraints falling away. The security team raises their weapons instinctively, but Shaw makes no aggressive moves. Instead, he turns to Gaia, their eyes locking. A visible field of energy crackles around them. Nearby instruments spark and short out. Shaw reaches for Gaia, their fingers intertwining. When he speaks, his voice is filled with awe. I can feel you, in my mind. Gaia nods, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The transformation has awakened latent abilities within you, Anthony. Abilities that have long lain dormant in human DNA. Rodriguez taps her comm badge. Rodriguez to bridge. Contact Sakari High Command immediately. We need guidance on this situation. As she waits for a response, Shaw rises from the bed. He towers over the medical staff, his newly muscled form terrifying by his uniform. Objects around the room begin to tremble, responding to his thoughts. Captain, Shaw says, his voice tight with concentration. I can sense everything on this ship. Every person, every system. It's overwhelming. Gaia places a calming hand on his arm. I can teach you to control these new abilities, Anthony. But it will take time and intensive training. Before Rodriguez can respond, her comm badge chirps. Captain, we have the Sakari High Command. Rodriguez straightens, her face a mask of professionalism, despite the chaos unfolding before her. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Starship Odyssey. We have a situation involving one of my officers and your healing techniques. I need to know. She's cut off by a burst of static, followed by a deep, resonant voice. Captain Rodriguez, we are aware of the situation. The bond formed between your officer and healer Gaia is unprecedented, but not entirely unexpected. We request that you transfer the officer to our medical facility for further study. Rodriguez's eyes narrow. With all due respect, he's still under my command. I need to understand the full implications of what's happened here. As if on cue, a tray of medical instruments flies across the room, narrowly missing Dr. Hill. Shaw winces, struggling to control his newfound telekinetic abilities. I apologize, Doctor, Shaw says, his voice strained. I'm having trouble focusing. Gaia steps closer to him, her presence seeming to calm the swirling energy. Let me guide you, Anthony. Focus on my voice, on our connection. As Shaw closes his eyes, the objects in the room settle. Dr. Hill cautiously approaches with a medical tricorder. Captain, I'd like to run a full battery of tests. We need to understand the extent of these changes. Rodriguez nods, her mind racing with the potential consequences of this transformation. Agreed. Shaw, you'll submit to whatever tests Dr. Hill deems necessary. Gaia, I want you to work with our medical team. Share everything you know about this symbiotic exchange. She taps her comm badge again. Rodriguez to Lieutenant Commander Jackson. Report to Medbay immediately. We have a potential security situation to discuss. As she waits for her tactical officer, Rodriguez watches Shaw and Gaia. They stand close together, communicating without words, an almost visible current of energy flowing between them. The captain can't shake the feeling that she's witnessing the birth of something entirely new, a hybrid of human and Sakari that could change the course of interstellar relations forever. Her comm badge chirps again, this time with a priority signal from Terran High Command. Rodriguez takes a deep breath, steeling herself for the difficult conversations ahead. Whatever happens next, she knows that the fate of her officer, her ship, and possibly the entire human race hangs in the balance. Captain Rodriguez's comm badge chirped insistently, breaking the tense silence that had fallen over the medbay. She stepped away from the containment field, her eyes never leaving Shaw and Gaia, as she answered the priority call from Terran High Command. "Rodriguez here," she said, her voice tight with stress. Admiral Zhao's gruff tones filled her ear. "Captain, we've received your report. The situation with Lieutenant Shaw is unprecedented and potentially volatile. You are to maintain strict quarantine protocols and prepare for immediate transfer to the nearest Terran research facility." Rodriguez's eyebrows furrowed. "With respect, Admiral, the Sakari have requested—" "The Sakari's request is denied," Zhao cut her off. "This is a matter of human security and sovereignty. We cannot allow an allied species, no matter how well-intentioned, to alter our personnel without full understanding of the consequences." As Rodriguez processed the Admiral's words, Dr. Hill approached with a data pad in hand. His face was pale, eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. "Captain," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "you need to see these results." Rodriguez held up a hand to pause the doctor. "Admiral, I'll need to review the situation with my medical staff. I'll report back within the hour." "Make it quick, Rodriguez. High Command out." The captain turned her full attention to Dr. Hill, who thrust the data pad into her hands. As she scanned the information, her eyebrows rose higher and higher. "This can't be right," she muttered. Hill nodded emphatically. "I've run the test 3 times. Lieutenant Shaw's DNA has stabilized into a completely new configuration. It's a perfect blend of human and Sakari genetic markers. And that's not all. His cellular structure is still evolving at a microscopic level." Rodriguez looked up from the pad, her gaze darting to Shaw. The lieutenant stood unnaturally still, his eyes locked with Gaia's in silent communication. "Doctor, what are the potential risks?" Rodriguez asked. Hill ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Unknown, Captain. Shaw's physiology is changing in ways we've never seen before. His strength and sensory acuity have increased exponentially, and there are indications of latent psychic abilities beginning to manifest." Rodriguez's mind raced, weighing her options. After a moment of tense deliberation, she tapped her comm badge again. "Security, this is the captain. Prepare Quarantine Unit Alpha for immediate use. Full containment protocols." She turned to Shaw, her voice firm but not unkind. "Lieutenant, I'm ordering you to voluntary confinement in our specialized quarantine unit. We need to ensure the safety of both you and the crew while we assess your condition." Shaw blinked, seeming to come out of a trance. He nodded slowly. "I understand, Captain. I'll comply." As security officers arrived to escort Shaw to the quarantine unit, Rodriguez noticed the lieutenant's gaze lingering on Gaia. The Sakari healer's expression was unreadable, but there was an unmistakable current of energy between them. Hours passed as Dr. Hill and his team ran exhaustive tests on Shaw through the quarantine unit's advanced sensor array. Rodriguez paced outside, fielding increasingly urgent communications from both Terran High Command and the Sakari government. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Rodriguez rushed to the nearest console, her heart racing. "Report!" she barked. Lieutenant Patel's voice came through, tinged with panic. "Captain, we're experiencing ship-wide power fluctuations. Multiple systems are failing across all decks." Before Rodriguez could respond, Dr. Hill burst out of his office. "Captain, it's Shaw. His vital signs just went haywire. And then, nothing. He's fallen into some kind of coma." Rodriguez's mind whirled, connecting the dots. The power fluctuations, could they be related to Shaw's condition? Hill nodded grimly. "It's possible. His body is generating energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen. If he lost control during a moment of distress, the ship lurched, lights flickering ominously. Rodriguez made a split-second decision. Get Gaia, she ordered. If anyone can stabilize Shaw, it's her. Minutes later, Gaia stood outside the quarantine unit, her iridescent skin pulsing with awe-inspiring energy. I must enter, she said, her melodic voice tinged with urgency. Anthony's life force is fading. Only direct contact can save him now. Rodriguez hesitated, years of training warring with the desperate need to save her officer. Finally, she nodded. Do it, she said, but be prepared for emergency extraction if anything goes wrong. As soon as the quarantine field dropped, Gaia glided to Shaw's side. She placed her hands on his chest, closing her eyes in concentration. Immediately, a visible wave of energy pulsed between them. The ship's sensors screamed in protest as an enormous surge of unknown energy erupted from the quarantine unit. Consoles sparked and fizzled, plunging the medbay into darkness. Emergency shutdown of all non-essential systems, Rodriguez shouted into her comm badge. Divert all power to life support and containment. In the eerie glow of emergency lighting, Rodriguez watched in awe as Gaia and Shaw were enveloped in a cocoon of swirling energy. The security feeds from inside the unit shorted out, leaving them blind to what was happening inside. For what felt like an eternity, the energy continued to build. Just as Rodriguez was about to order an emergency beam-out, the surge abruptly dissipated. As systems slowly came back online, the security feeds flickered to life. Rodriguez gasped at the sight before her. Shaw and Gaia stood side by side, their appearances subtly altered. Shaw's skin now shimmered with an opalescent sheen, while Gaia's features had taken on distinctly human characteristics. Before anyone could react, Rodriguez felt a presence in her mind, a telepathic voice she instantly recognized as Shaw's. Captain, the voice said clear and strong, Gaia and I have undergone a mutual transformation. We formed a bond that bridges our species, opening doors to possibilities we've only dreamed of. Rodriguez opened her mouth to respond, but a shrill alarm cut her off. Lieutenant Patel's voice crackled over the comm system. Captain to the bridge. Long-range sensors have detected an approaching vessel. Unknown configuration. Energy signature doesn't match any known species. They're on an intercept course. Shaw's eyes met Rodriguez's, a newfound commitment shining within them. Captain, let us help. Guy and I can use our combined abilities to attempt communication with the unknown ship. As the Odyssey's crew scrambled to assess the new threat, Captain Rodriguez found herself at a crossroads. Trust in Shaw and Gaia's unprecedented abilities, or stick to protocol and prepare for a potential hostile encounter? With the unknown ship drawing ever closer, Rodriguez knew her next decision could change the course of human history. With the unknown vessel rapidly closing in, Rodriguez made her decision. Shaw, Gaia, she said, her voice firm but tinged with uncertainty. You have my authorization to attempt communication, but be warned. At the first sign of danger, I will not hesitate to take defensive action. The hybrid pair nodded in unison, their movements unnaturally synchronized. As security personnel stood ready, Shaw and Gaia joined hands within the quarantine unit. Their eyes closed, faces relaxing into expressions of deep concentration. For several tense moments, nothing seemed to happen. Then a soft glow began to emanate from their joined hands, spreading up their arms and enveloping their bodies. The air around them shimmered with an otherworldly energy that made the hair on Rodriguez's arms stand on end. Suddenly, Shaw's eyes snapped open, glowing with an intense alien light. When he spoke, his voice resonated with a power that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the ship. Captain, he said, his tone filled with awe, we've made contact. The vessel, it belongs to a race known as the Progenitors. Rodriguez's eyes widened. Progenitors? I've never heard of them. Gaia's melodic voice joined Shaw's, creating an eerie harmony. They are ancient beyond measure, Captain, the original seeders of life throughout our galaxy. Before Rodriguez could process this revelation, the ship lurched violently. Emergency klaxons blared as Lieutenant Patel's voice crackled over the comm system. Captain, The unknown vessel has extended some kind of energy tendril. It's connected with our hull, specifically the section containing the quarantine unit. Rodriguez opened her mouth to order evasive maneuvers, but her words died in her throat as a blinding light erupted from the quarantine unit. The energy surrounding Shaw and Gaia expanded explosively, engulfing the entire medbay in a matter of seconds. The captain shielded her eyes, feeling a strange, tingling sensation wash over her body. As quickly as it began, the light faded, leaving spots dancing in her vision. When she could see again, Rodriguez gasped at the sight before her. Shaw and Gaia stood hand in hand, but they were profoundly changed. Their bodies had become a perfect blend of human and Sakari features, their skin shimmering with an opalescent sheen that seemed to shift and flow like liquid starlight. Their eyes, now a swirling mix of colors, held a depth of knowledge that made Rodriguez feel small and insignificant. "Captain," they spoke in unison, their voices carrying an ethereal quality that sent shivers down her spine. "We bring a message from the progenitors." Rodriguez straightened her uniform, trying to maintain an air of authority despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Go on," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The progenitors have been observing both human and Sakari civilizations for millennia," Shaw began. Gaia continued seamlessly. "Our union represents a crucial step in their grand experiment of cosmic evolution. They offer humanity and the Sakari a chance to join a galactic federation of advanced species," Shaw added. "But this offer comes with a challenge," Gaia finished. "Both races must prove their worthiness by overcoming their differences and working together." As if on cue, the ship's systems came back online. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing an enormous vessel of impossible geometry, its surface rippling with colors and patterns that defy description. Lieutenant Patel's voice came through the comm, filled with a mix of fear and excitement. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from both Terran and Sakari high commands. They're aware of the situation." Rodriguez took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. "Patch them through to the conference room. Shaw, Gaia, you're with me." As they made their way through the corridors, crew members stopped and stared, whispering in awe at the transformed pair. Rodriguez couldn't help but notice the way Shaw and Gaia moved in perfect synchronization, their steps silent and graceful. Entering the conference room, Rodriguez was met with the holographic projections of Admiral Zhao and the Sakari High Chancellor. Their expressions were a mix of confusion, anger, and poorly concealed fear. "Captain Rodriguez," Admiral Zhao barked, "explain the situation immediately." Before Rodriguez could respond, Shaw and Gaia stepped forward. As one, they began to recount their encounter with the progenitors, explaining the offer of galactic fellowship and the challenges that lay ahead. The Admiral's face grew redder with each passing moment, while the Sakari Chancellor's features shifted through a kaleidoscope of colors. When Shaw and Gaia finished speaking, a heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, the Sakari Chancellor broke the quiet. "This is unprecedented. If what you say is true, it could change the very fabric of our societies." Admiral Zhao nodded grudgingly. "As much as it pains me to admit it, I agree. The potential benefits of this Galactic Federation are too great to ignore." Rodriguez seized the moment. "Then I propose we accept the Progenitor's challenge. Let the Odyssey lead a joint human-Sakari mission to prove our worth." As the political leaders debated the proposal, Shaw and Gaia turned to Rodriguez, their eyes glowing with an inner light. "Captain," they said in unison, "the first challenge approaches. A star system on the brink of collapse. Multiple inhabited worlds at risk." Rodriguez felt a familiar surge of dedication. This was what she had trained for. To lead her crew into the unknown, to face impossible odds, and to make a difference in the universe. "Very well," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "Let's show these progenitors what humanity and the Sakari can do when we work together." As Rodriguez began outlining her plan to the assembled leaders, Shaw and Gaia exchanged a silent glance. Their journey, and that of their two species, was just beginning. The challenges ahead would test them in ways they could scarcely imagine. But for now, they stood united, ready to face whatever the cosmos might throw their way. The Odyssey and its allied fleet emerged from warp space. the dying star system filling their view screens. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the swollen red giant at the center of the system. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Lieutenant Patel's fingers danced across his console. "Multiple inhabited worlds detected, Captain. The star's energy output is highly unstable. Estimates suggest we have less than 48 hours before supernova." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Deploy the probes. Shaw, Gaia, you're up." In the specially modified control room adjacent to the bridge, Shaw and Gaia stood side by side, their hands clasped. Their skin shimmered with an otherworldly light, pulsing in rhythm with the distant star. As the unmanned probes launched from the Odyssey, Shaw and Gaia closed their eyes in unison. Their minds reached out, connecting with the probes on a level that defied conventional understanding. "Incredible," Dr. Hill murmured, monitoring their vital signs. "Their neural activity is off the charts." On the main view screen, the crew watched in awe as the probes maneuvered with impossible precision, diving into the star's roiling corona. Data began pouring in, filling the ship's computers with information about the star's internal structure and the nature of its instability. "We have the data," Shaw's voice echoed through the ship, carrying an otherworldly resonance. "Initiating Phase 2. Gaia's melodic tones joined his. "Deploying energy stabilizers. All ships, move into position." The combined human and Sakari fleet sprang into action. Massive devices, the product of both species' most advanced technologies, were positioned around the dying star. As they activated, streams of energy began to flow from the star's core, slowly siphoning off the excess that threatened to trigger a catastrophic explosion. For hours, the operation proceeded smoothly. Then, without warning, alarms blared across the Odyssey's bridge. "Stabilizer 7 is malfunctioning," Patel shouted. "Energy levels are spiking." Rodriguez's heart raced. "Can we shut it down remotely?" "Negative, Captain," Patel replied, his voice tight with tension. "The feedback loop is too strong. If we don't regain control, it'll trigger the supernova within minutes." In the control room, Shaw and Gaia's eyes snapped open. "We can fix this," they said in perfect unison. Before anyone could stop them, the hybrid pair interfaced directly with the ship's systems. Their bodies lifted off the ground, surrounded by a swirling vortex of energy. "My God," Dr. Hill gasped, staring at his medical tricorder. "They're channeling the star's energy through their own bodies." On the bridge, Rodriguez watched as Shaw and Gaia's efforts stabilized the malfunctioning device. But the strain on their bodies was evident. Their forms flickered as if struggling to maintain cohesion under the immense energies they were channeling. "Captain," Dr. Hill's voice cracked with concern, "their molecular structure is destabilizing. If we don't stop this soon, we'll lose them both." Rodriguez felt the weight of command pressing down on her. The lives of billions hung in the balance. But could she sacrifice Shaw and Gaia to save them? Taking a deep breath, she made her decision. "Shaw, Gaia," she said, her voice firm but filled with regret. "Push it to the limit. Complete the stabilization." The hybrid pair's glow intensified, their bodies becoming almost transparent as they poured every ounce of their strength into the task. The ship trembled, systems overloading under the strain. Just as it seemed Shaw and Gaia would be torn apart by the forces they were channeling, a wave of energy pulsed outward from the star. For a heartbeat, every screen on the Odyssey went dark. When the systems came back online, a stunned silence fell over the bridge. The star's violent red had faded to a steady, warm orange. Its energy signature had stabilized. We did it," Patel whispered, breaking the silence. "The supernova has been averted." In the control room, Shaw and Gaia collapsed to the floor, their bodies smoking and their skin pulsing with residual energy. Dr. Hill rushed to their side, medical tricorder whirring. "They're alive," he announced, relief evident in his voice. "But their physiology, it's changed again. Their DNA has somehow integrated aspects of the star's energy." As the crew celebrated their narrow victory, a familiar presence touched Rodriguez's mind. The progenitors had returned. "You have passed the first test," the alien voice resonated in her thoughts. "But greater challenges lie ahead. The evolution of Shaw and Gaia is key to facing what comes next. Before Rodriguez could respond, the presence faded. She turned to her communications officer. Contact Terran and Sakari high commands. Inform them of our success, and that we're coming home. As the Odyssey set course for Earth, Rodriguez couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever trials the progenitors had in store for them, she knew one thing for certain: her crew would face them together. As the Odyssey set course for Earth, Captain Rodriguez couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were just getting started. Her suspicions were confirmed when Dr. Hill's voice crackled over the intercom, urgency evident in his tone. Captain, you need to come to the medical bay immediately. It's Shaw and Gaia. Rodriguez hurried through the corridors, her mind racing with possibilities. When she entered the medical bay, she stopped short, her eyes widening at the sight before her. Shaw and Gaia lay on adjacent beds, their bodies shimmering with an otherworldly light. As Rodriguez watched, Shaw's features began to shift, his skin taking on the opalescent sheen of Gaia's Sakari form. Simultaneously, Gaia's body changed, her alien features softening into a more human appearance. "What's happening to them?" Rodriguez asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Hill shook his head, his eyes fixed on his medical tricorder. "Their cellular structure is becoming increasingly malleable. It seems the star's energy they absorbed during the stabilization mission has triggered another transformation." As if on cue, Shaw's eyes fluttered open. He blinked, confusion evident on his now Sakari-like face. "Captain? What's going on?" Gaia stirred beside him, her human features a stark contrast to her usual appearance. She reached out, touching Shaw's face with wonder. "You look like me. And You look human," Shaw finished, awe in his voice. Over the next few hours, Dr. Hill ran a battery of tests as Shaw and Gaia experimented with their newfound abilities. They discovered they could switch between human, Sakari, and hybrid forms at will, their bodies adapting with fluid ease. "The potential applications of this ability are staggering," Rodriguez mused, watching as Shaw shifted his arm from human to Sakari and back again. "Dr. Hill, I want you to conduct extensive tests. We need to understand the full extent of their transformation." As the medical team worked, the ship's long-range sensors picked up a distress signal. Lieutenant Patel's voice came through the comm system. "Captain, we're detecting a signal from a nearby Sakari colony world. The planet is experiencing severe geological instability." Rodriguez straightened, her decision already made. "Set a course for the colony. We're going to assist." As they approached the planet, the severity of the situation became clear. The world's surface was a chaotic mess of erupting volcanoes and fracturing continents. Toxic gases filled the atmosphere, making standard rescue operations nearly impossible. Shaw and Gaia stepped forward, their bodies already adapting to the harsh conditions displayed on the interface. "Captain," Shaw said, his voice resonating with newfound confidence, "we can lead the rescue team. Our bodies can withstand the environment." Rodriguez nodded, recognizing the opportunity this presented. "Agreed. Assemble your team and prepare for immediate deployment." On the planet's surface, Shaw and Gaia's abilities proved invaluable. They led the rescue team through treacherous terrain, their bodies shifting to withstand toxic fumes in extreme temperatures. When they encountered a group of Sakari colonists trapped in an underground cavern, Shaw's ability to take on Sakari form helped ease the colonists' initial distrust. As they worked to evacuate the colonists, the planet's instability worsened. Massive earthquakes shook the ground, and volcanic eruptions filled the sky with ash. Shaw and Gaia pushed their abilities to the limit, working tirelessly to save as many lives as possible. Their efforts inspired the human and Sakari crew members, who set aside their differences to work together with newfound efficiency. The rescue operation became a testament to what their two species could accomplish when united. The mission took an unexpected turn when Shaw and Gaia ventured deep into a collapsing mine shaft to save a group of trapped miners. As they navigated the crumbling tunnels, they stumbled upon an ancient alien artifact, pulsing with unknown energy. "What is that?" Gaia whispered, reaching out towards the object. Before Shaw could respond, the artifact emitted a blinding light. When their vision cleared, they found the object had disappeared, seemingly absorbed into their bodies. Suddenly, their molecular control increased exponentially. Shaw gasped as his body instantaneously adapted to the extreme heat and toxic gases surrounding them. "Gaia, are you feeling this?" She nodded, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like we've become one with the environment." As they emerged from the mine with the rescued miners, the Odyssey's sensors detected the powerful energy signature now emanating from Shaw and Gaia. Almost immediately, a familiar presence touched their minds. The progenitors had returned. "You have taken the next step," the alien voice resonated in their thoughts. "But be warned. Others will seek this power. Guard it well." Before they could process this warning, urgent news came from the ship. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through their communicators, tension evident in her tone. "Shaw, Gaia, we need you back on board immediately. Multiple unidentified ships have entered human and Sakari space, all converging on our location." As they rushed back to the Odyssey with the last of the evacuees, Shaw and Gaia exchanged a worried glance. Their evolution had taken an unexpected turn, and now it seemed the entire galaxy had taken notice. Whatever came next, they knew their journey was nowhere near the end. The Odyssey's engines roared to life, breaking orbit as the unknown ships drew ever closer. In the medical bay, Shaw and Gaia began to experience vivid shared visions of distant worlds and ancient civilizations, hinting at the vast knowledge now locked within their transformed bodies. As the ship accelerated to warp speed, they clasped hands, their forms shimmering with otherworldly energy, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the Odyssey hurtled through space, Shaw and Gaia's shared visions intensified, their minds flooded with images of distant worlds and ancient civilizations. The medical bay hummed with energy as the two hybrids sat facing each other, their hands clasped tightly. "Captain," Shaw called out, his voice strained with effort, "we're seeing something. A space station. It's massive, hidden." Rodriguez leaned in, her brow furrowed. "Can you give me coordinates?" Gaia's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. "We can do better than that. We can guide you there." Without hesitation, Rodriguez gave the order to alter course. As the Odyssey changed direction, the pursuing ships adjusted their trajectories, closing in on their position. "Captain, multiple unidentified vessels on an intercept course," Patel reported, his fingers flying over the tactical display. Rodriguez gritted her teeth. "Evasive maneuvers. We need to reach that station before they catch us." As the ship pushed its engines to the limit, Shaw and Gaia interfaced directly with the navigation systems. Their bodies shimmered with energy as they guided the Odyssey through a series of complex maneuvers, evading weapons fire from the pursuing ships. Suddenly, the view screen lit up with a dazzling display of energy. "Cloaking field detected," Patel announced. "It's massive, Captain. An entire star system." Shaw and Gaia spoke in unison, their voices reverberating with power. "We can get us through. There's a weak point in the field." Rodriguez nodded, trusting their newfound abilities. "Do it." The Odyssey surged forward, passing through a shimmering barrier of energy. As they emerged on the other side, the crew gasped in awe. Before them loomed an enormous ring-shaped space station, orbiting a brilliant blue giant star. "My God," Rodriguez whispered, taking in the sight. The station's design was unlike anything they had encountered before, a fusion of familiar progenitor technology and something entirely alien. As the Odyssey approached, the station's defenses sprang to life. Energy beams lanced out, narrowly missing the ship's hull. "Warning shots," Patel confirmed. "They're not trying to destroy us, but they're not welcoming us either." Shaw and Gaia exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. "Captain," Shaw said, his voice urgent, "we think we can communicate with the station's AI. Something about our connection to the artifact we found. It's pulling us towards the station." Rodriguez hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks. Finally, she nodded. "Do it, but be careful." The hybrids closed their eyes, their bodies glowing with intensifying energy. The bridge crew watched in fascination as Shaw and Gaia's forms seemed to flicker, becoming almost transparent at times. Suddenly, the station's weapons powered down. A beam of light shot out from the station, enveloping the Odyssey in a soft blue glow. "We have permission to dock," Gaia announced, her voice filled with wonder. "The station, it recognizes us. It's called the Nexus." As the Odyssey maneuvered into a docking port, Rodriguez assembled a small team to explore the station. Shaw and Gaia led the way, their bodies adapting to the station's environment with fluid ease. The interior of the Nexus was a marvel of technology and biology. Vast chambers housed samples from thousands of alien species, while others contained technology beyond their wildest imaginations. In the central core, Shaw and Gaia approached a holographic interface that sprang to life at their presence. An image of a progenitor appeared, its form shifting and changing as it spoke. "Welcome, children of evolution," the hologram said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You have found the Nexus, our greatest creation and our final legacy." As the hologram explained the true purpose of the Nexus, to guide the evolution of sentient species across the galaxy, Shaw and Gaia felt their bodies responding to the energies surrounding them. Their forms became less solid, more energy than matter. The transformation allowed them to interface directly with the Nexus's systems, flood their minds with vast amounts of knowledge and power. But as they delved deeper into the station's databases, they uncovered a chilling truth. "Captain," Shaw called out, his voice tinged with urgency, "we have a problem, a big one." Before Rodriguez could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Patel's voice crackled over the comm system. "Captain, the ships that were pursuing us have found us. They've surrounded the system, and some of them are powering up weapons." As Rodriguez rushed to deal with the diplomatic crisis unfolding outside, Shaw and Gaia made their fateful discovery. The hostile hive mind species, the ancient enemy of the progenitors, was on the verge of breaking free from its weakening prison. The hybrids realized the terrible choice before them. They could use the power of the Nexus to reinforce the prison, but doing so would require them to merge fully with the station, potentially losing themselves in the process. As the first shots were fired outside the Nexus, Shaw and Gaia stood at the precipice of their decision, the future of the cosmos hanging in the balance. Balance. The destiny of the universe hung on their decision. Suddenly, Shaw felt a surge of energy coursing through his body. He turned to Gaia, her eyes wide with the same realization. Their bodies began to glow, the artifact within them pulsing with newfound power. "It's happening," Gaia whispered, her voice a mix of awe and trepidation. Before they could process the change, the entire station shuddered. The walls around them began to shift and flow like liquid metal. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm system. "Shaw, Gaia, what's going on? The station is transforming." As Shaw opened his mouth to respond, he felt his consciousness expanding, merging with Gaia's and spreading throughout the station's systems. Their combined essence flowed through circuitry and organic pathways, activating long-dormant progenitor technology. Outside, the Odyssey's crew watched in stunned silence as the Nexus reconfigured itself. The ring structure elongated and morphed, taking on a more organic appearance. Within minutes, the station had transformed into a colossal, sleek starship unlike anything they had ever seen. Inside the newly formed vessel, Shaw and Gaia struggled to maintain their individuality amidst the vast sea of information and power they now accessed. Their love for each other acted as an anchor, preventing them from losing themselves entirely to the progenitor systems. As their merged consciousness stabilized, they became aware of a massive energy wave emanating from their position. The wave washed over the Odyssey and the surrounding alien ships, carrying with it the transformative power of the artifact. On the Odyssey's bridge, Lieutenant Commander Jackson clutched his head as a sudden flood of thoughts and emotions, not his own, overwhelmed him. Dr. Hill gasped as his mind began processing data at an unprecedented rate. Complex equations and biological processes becoming clear as day. Similar scenes played out across the ship as crew members experienced rapid, sometimes alarming changes to their bodies and minds. Rodriguez watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as her crew transformed before her eyes. "Captain," Patel's voice shook as he reported, We're receiving multiple distress calls from the alien ships. They're experiencing similar transformations. Rodriguez's mind raced, trying to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. Before she could formulate a response, a familiar yet altered voice resonated through the ship's communication systems. Captain Rodriguez, the voice of Shaw and Gaia spoke in unison, carrying an otherworldly timbre. We've merged with the Nexus. We understand now the full scope of the Progenitor's plan. Their merged consciousness quickly explained the situation. The imminent threat of the hive mind species, the deteriorating prison, and the precious little time they had to prepare. We're broadcasting a galaxy-wide warning, they continued. We're sharing information on how species can unlock their genetic potential. It's our only chance against the coming invasion. As if on cue, Rodriguez's console lit up with incoming transmissions from both Terran and Sakari high commands. They had received the warning and were mobilizing their fleets. Both governments requested the Odyssey and its newly enhanced crew to take a leading role in the defense efforts. Rodriguez's mind reeled from the influx of information and the weight of responsibility now placed upon her shoulders. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before addressing her transformed crew. All right, people. I know we're all dealing with a lot right now, but we have a job to do. Jackson, use your new abilities to coordinate with the alien ships still in the system. Hill, I need you analyzing every bit of data we have on these transformations and the coming threat. As the crew sprang into action, their new abilities allowing them to work with unprecedented efficiency, Rodriguez turned her attention back to Shaw and Gaia. What's our next move? She asked, her voice firm despite the uncertainty churning in her gut. There was a pause before they responded, their merged voice tinged with a note of sadness. We've discovered that this ship, the Nexus, is capable of generating stable wormholes. It could be crucial in coordinating our defenses across the galaxy. Rodriguez sensed there was more. But fully activating this capability requires us to completely integrate with the ship's systems, they explained. We might lose ourselves in the process. Our individual identities could be gone forever. The weight of their potential sacrifice hung heavy in the air. Rodriguez closed her eyes, feeling the enormity of the decision before them. Before she could respond, the ship shuddered. Shaw and Gaia's voice came through again, urgent this time. Captain, we're detecting a massive energy surge from the prison. The hive mind, they're breaking free earlier than we anticipated. We need to act now. Rodriguez's training kicked in, pushing aside her personal feelings. Understood. Odyssey, prepare to dock with the Nexus ship. We'll use it as our mobile command center. As the Odyssey maneuvered into position, Shaw and Gaia made their decision. Their merged consciousness spread deeper into the Nexus ship's systems, initiating the wormhole drive. The massive vessel hummed with power, space itself seeming to bend around it. A swirling portal opened before them, a gateway to distant parts of the galaxy where the first battles of this war would be fought. Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, watching as her transformed crew worked in perfect synchronization, preparing for the conflict ahead. The wormhole loomed large on the interface, a symbol of the uncertain future that awaited them all. As the Nexus ship aligned itself with the portal, Rodriguez couldn't help but wonder about the cost of their impending victory, and whether Shaw and Gaia's transcendent love would survive the trials to come. Come. As the Nexus ship aligned itself with the portal, Rodriguez felt her stomach lurch. The massive vessel shuddered, and in an instant, they were pulled into the swirling vortex of the wormhole. The transit was unlike anything Rodriguez had ever experienced. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. Her vision blurred, colors bleeding into one another as the ship hurtled through the fabric of space-time. She gripped her command chair, squeezing hard, willing herself to stay conscious through the disorienting journey. After what felt like both an eternity and mere seconds, the Nexus ship burst out of the wormhole. Rodriguez blinked rapidly, her eyes adjusting to the sudden return of normal space. Before them loomed a massive structure, the prison that held the hostile hive mind species. Status report, Rodriguez barked, fighting off a wave of nausea. Multiple breaches detected in the prison's containment field, Patel responded, his fingers flying over his console. Captain, we've got bogies, lots of them. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she took in the scene on the main view screen. Streams of insectoid creatures poured from the breaches, their chitinous bodies glinting in the light of nearby stars. The swarm moved with eerie synchronization, spreading out in all directions. "They're attacking nearby systems," Jackson reported, his voice strained as he tapped into his new telepathic abilities. "I can feel their collective consciousness. It's overwhelming." Shaw and Gaia's merged voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Captain, we've discovered weapons capable of repairing the containment field, but..." Rodriguez sensed their hesitation. "What's the catch?" "To deploy them, we must fully integrate with the ship's core," they explained. We may not be able to maintain our individual identities if we do this." Before Rodriguez could respond, Dr. Hill's enhanced mind had already processed the implications. "The risk is high, but without those weapons, we don't stand a chance against the hive mind's full force." As if to emphasize his point, a proximity alarm blared. A wave of insectoid fighters swarmed toward the Nexus ship, their mandibles gleaming with malicious intent. "Defensive measures online," Patel announced, "deploying automated defense drones." The space around the Nexus ship lit up with weapons fire as the drones engaged the approaching swarm. Rodriguez watched the battle unfold, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. A new transmission cut through the chaos. "Odyssey, this is Admiral Xandar. We're inbound with the combined Terran Sakari fleet. Be advised, the energy wave from your transformation has reached our homeworlds. We're dealing with widespread mutations, not all of them beneficial." Rodriguez absorbed this new information, the weight of command settling heavily on her shoulders. She turned her attention back to Shaw and Gaia. "We need those weapons. Are you prepared for the consequences?" There was a moment of silence before their merged voice responded, filled with dedication and a hint of fear. "We are. Our love has brought us this far. It will be our anchor in what's to come." As Shaw and Gaia began the integration process, the Nexus ship pulsed with energy. Rodriguez watched in awe as their physical forms dissolved into pure light, spreading throughout the vessel's systems. The ship's weapons powered up, energy readings spiking off the charts. A massive beam of iridescent light shot forth from the Nexus ship, striking the prison. The containment field began to stabilize, breaches slowly closing. But the hive mind wasn't going down without a fight. A concentrated attack slammed into the Nexus ship, shaking it violently. "All hands, battle stations," Rodriguez ordered. "Odyssey, move to defend the Nexus ship. We need to buy them time to complete the repairs." The space around them erupted into a full-scale war. Ships from a dozen species, their crews newly empowered by genetic transformations, engaged the hive mind's forces. Energy weapons crisscrossed the void, while telepathic attacks manifested as shimmering waves of psychic energy. Within the Nexus ship, Shaw and Gaia struggled to maintain their merged consciousness amidst the vast progenitor systems. Their love became a beacon, guiding them through the sea of information and power that threatened to overwhelm them. Suddenly, they discovered a hidden capability within the ship's systems. "Captain," their voice rang out, stronger and more unified than before. "We're broadcasting a signal to disrupt the hive mind's network." The effect was immediate. The swarm's movements became erratic, their coordinated attacks faltering. The Allied fleet pressed their advantage, pushing back against the weakened enemy forces. But the hive mind was nothing if not adaptable. A massive psychic assault slammed into Shaw and Gaia's merged consciousness, threatening to sever their connection to the Nexus ship. They fought back, their mental bond strained to its limits. As the battle raged on, the prison's containment field neared completion. Victory seemed within reach. Then a monstrous form emerged from the largest remaining breach. The Hive Queen, a creature of nightmarish proportions, set its sights on the Nexus ship. "Evasive maneuvers," Rodriguez shouted, but she knew it was futile. The Queen was too fast, too determined. Inside the Nexus ship's core, Shaw and Gaia prepared for a direct confrontation with the hive mind's leader. Their merged consciousness expanded, tapping into abilities they had only begun to understand. As the Queen closed in, its massive form dwarfing even the Nexus ship. The final moments of the prison repair countdown ticked away. The fate of the stars hung in the balance, with only the power of Shaw and Gaia's transcendent love standing between humanity and annihilation. Annihilation. As the Queen's massive form bore down on the Nexus ship, Rodriguez felt a surge of desperation. The vessel shuddered violently as its energy shield activated, barely withstanding the initial impact. "All hands, brace for impact," Rodriguez shouted, gripping her chair as a shockwave rippled through the ship. Alarms blared, and systems flickered across the bridge. Inside the Nexus ship's core, Shaw and Gaia's merged consciousness fought to maintain control. Their essence pulsed with dedication as they pushed deeper into the ship's systems, unlocking hidden potential. "Captain," their unified voice echoed through the comms, strained but resolute. "We're tapping into the full power of the Progenitor technology. Stand by for transformation." Before Rodriguez's eyes, the Nexus ship began to change. Its outer hull shifted and reconfigured, revealing massive energy cannons and reinforced plating. The ship was becoming a fortress, a bastion against the hive mind's assault. "Odyssey, this is Rodriguez. Concentrate fire on the smaller creatures. We need to buy the Nexus ship more time." The transformed crew of the Odyssey responded with unprecedented efficiency. Jackson's enhanced telepathic abilities allowed for perfect coordination between gunners, while Hill's accelerated cognition optimized weapon trajectories in real time. Energy beams lanced out from the Nexus ship, scorching the Queen's chitinous exoskeleton. The massive insectoid retaliated, unleashing waves of psychic energy that battered against the ship's defenses. Corrosive secretions sprayed from her maw, eating away at the hull wherever they landed. As the titanic struggle raged on, Admiral Xander's voice crackled over the comms. "Odyssey, we've established a perimeter around the prison. The containment field is nearly complete, but these blasted bugs won't give up." Rodriguez watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. The Allied fleet held their ground, but the Queen's presence seemed to inspire fierce resistance in her minions. Time was running out. Suddenly, Shaw and Gaia's voice resonated through the ship, filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Captain, we've discovered something. A way to neutralize the hive mind's network without destroying them. But the cost..." "What is it?" Rodriguez asked, her heart pounding. "We can broadcast a frequency to sever the Queen's control over her subjects, but generating it requires channeling massive amounts of energy through us. We might not survive the process." The implications hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. Before she could respond, the Queen launched another assault on the Nexus ship. The vessel groaned under the strain, hull breaches flaring across multiple decks. "Do it," Rodriguez commanded, her voice tight with emotion. "We'll buy you every second we can." Inside the Nexus ship's core, Shaw and Gaia's merged consciousness expanded, spreading through every system. Their love for each other became an anchor, a lifeline in the sea of data and energy threatening to overwhelm them. The ship began to pulse with power as the frequency buildup began. The Queen, sensing the impending threat, redoubled her efforts. Her massive form crashed against the Nexus ship's hull, breaching several decks and causing critical damage. "All ships, focus fire on the Queen," Rodriguez ordered. "We need to buy them more time." The space around the Nexus ship lit up with weapons fire as the Allied fleet concentrated their assault on the monstrous insectoid. Energy beams and missiles peppered the Queen's body, but still she pressed on, driven by the primal instinct to protect her hive. Inside the core, Shaw and Gaia pushed themselves to the limit. Their individual identities began to blur as they channeled more and more power. The frequency built to a crescendo, the ship vibrating with the intensity of the broadcast. In a blinding flash, the energy pulse erupted from the Nexus ship. It engulfed both the vessel and the Queen, expanding rapidly to encompass the prison and the surrounding space. For a heart-stopping moment, all sensors and communications went dark. When systems came back online, an astonishing sight greeted the Allied fleet. The Queen floated motionless in space, her psychic connection to the hive severed. Around her, the smaller creatures ceased their attacks, their movements erratic and confused. The containment field is fully operational, Patel reported, his voice filled with disbelief. We did it. But as the cheers erupted across the Allied ships, Rodriguez's eyes remained fixed on the Nexus ship. It hung in space, dark and unresponsive. Shaw, Gaia, do you copy? She called out, her voice echoing in the silence. No response came. Prep a rescue team, Rodriguez ordered, her eyebrows furrowed. We're going aboard the Nexus ship. As the boarding party entered the transformed vessel, they found its interior dramatically altered. The once mechanical corridors had become a hybrid of technology and organic matter, pulsing with residual energy. In the ship's core, they discovered a singular entity, a being of pure energy that seemed to flicker between two distinct forms. Dr. Hill, part of the rescue team, approached the pulsing light cautiously. It's them, he breathed, his enhanced mind racing to comprehend what he was seeing. Shaw and Gaia. They've merged with the ship itself. They've become something entirely new. As the rescue team gathered around the flickering entity, questions raced through their minds. Could Shaw and Gaia be separated from the ship? Was there a way to restore their individual identities? And what would this mean for the future of interstellar travel and communication? The transformed crew of the Odyssey exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. Their journey was nowhere near the end. As celebrations erupted across the galaxy, they knew their next mission was just beginning, to unravel the mystery of this new life form and find a way to save the heroes who had sacrificed everything to protect them all. As the rescue team gathered around the flickering entity in the Nexus ship's core, Dr. Hill's enhanced mind raced with possibilities. He turned to Captain Rodriguez, his eyes gleaming with dedication. Captain, we need to establish a research base here immediately. This being, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. We can't risk moving it until we understand more. Rodriguez nodded, her gaze fixed on the pulsating light. Agreed. Contact Admiral Xandar and request additional personnel and equipment. We're going to need the best minds in the galaxy for this. Over the next few weeks, the Nexus ship transformed into a bustling research center. Scientists from various allied species worked tirelessly, their efforts coordinated by Dr. Hill. The ship's corridors buzzed with activity as researchers set up advanced equipment and conducted experiments. Dr. Hill stood before a holographic display, analyzing the latest data on the Shaw-Gaia entity. The pulsating energy at the ship's core had become a familiar sight, but its secrets remained elusive. Dr. Hill, a young Sakari scientist, burst into the room, her antenna twitching with excitement. We've had a breakthrough in stabilizing the entity's form. Hill's eyes widened as he examined the new data. Using a combination of progenitor technology and newly developed techniques, they had created a containment field that allowed the Shaw-Gaia entity to maintain a more stable shape. As the field activated, the flickering light coalesced into a more defined form. Suddenly, the ship's systems came to life, displays lighting up with fragmented text and images. It's communicating, Hill breathed, his fingers flying over the control panel. These are thoughts, memories, from both Shaw and Gaia. The breakthrough sent a wave of renewed hope through the research team. Hill immediately contacted Captain Rodriguez, who had been overseeing the aftermath of the hive mind queen's defeat. Captain, we have promising news, Hill reported, his voice tight with excitement. We might be able to salvage their individual identities. Rodriguez's relief was palpable, even through the comlink. Excellent work, Doctor. Keep me updated on any further developments. While the research team focused on the Shaw-Gaia entity, Rodriguez turned her attention to the liberated insectoid creatures. Without the Queen's control, they displayed signs of individual consciousness and a willingness to communicate. Admiral Xandar's holographic form appeared on the Odyssey's bridge. Captain, we've initiated diplomatic talks with the emerging leaders of the former hive mind species. It's a delicate process, but there's potential for peaceful coexistence. Rodriguez nodded, her mind racing with the implications. That's good news, Admiral. We'll need all the allies we can get in the face of these galactic changes. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, detailing the ongoing effects of the transformative energy wave. Many worlds face social and political upheaval as individuals with newly acquired abilities struggle to find their place. Amidst this chaos, a young Terran scientist named Dr. Marcus Reeves made a startling discovery. His holographic image appeared in Dr. Hill's lab, his eyes wide with excitement. Dr. Hill, I've been analyzing data from the Nexus ship and samples of transformed individuals. The energy wave, it's unlocked a dormant genetic potential common to many species in our galaxy. I believe the progenitors engineered this potential into various species as part of their grand experiment in evolution. Hill's mind raced with the implications. This could be the key to stabilizing Shaw and Gaia. Send me everything you have, Dr. Reeves. We'll use this to refine our approach. With this new information, Hill and his team developed a method to gradually separate the merged consciousness. They tuned the containment field to resonate with the unique genetic signatures of Shaw and Gaia. As the separation process began, the Nexus ship's systems surged to life. Holographic projections filled the air, displaying Shaw and Gaia's memories. The research team watched in awe as key moments from the couple's journey unfolded before them. Hill observed the separation process intently, noting every fluctuation and response. "It's working," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the readings. "But it's going to take time. Their bond is incredibly strong." The procedure proved to be delicate and time-consuming. As Shaw and Gaia's consciousnesses slowly disentangled, their individual personalities began to reassert themselves. However, complications arose. The ship's systems experienced power fluctuations, and artificial gravity failed intermittently. During one particularly intense phase of the separation, alarms blared throughout the Nexus ship. Hill stumbled as the floor beneath him vibrated violently. "What's happening?" he shouted over the din. A technician's voice crackled over the comm system. "Sir, the wormhole drive is activating. We can't shut it down." Before anyone could react, a blinding light enveloped the Nexus ship. When it faded, Hill rushed to the nearest viewport, his heart pounding. The familiar star patterns were gone, replaced by an unfamiliar celestial landscape. "This is Dr. Hill to all ship," he called out, his voice tight with urgency. "Status report." Captain Rodriguez's voice came through, tense but controlled. "The Odyssey and several research vessels were caught in the wormhole with us. We're working to determine our location now." As the disoriented crew worked to get their bearings, a junior officer's voice cut through the chatter. "Captain, long-range scanners have detected a structure on a nearby planet. It matches progenitor design patterns." Rodriguez's voice was firm as she issued her orders. "Prep and away, team. We need to investigate that outpost. With any luck, we'll find something to help us fully restore Shaw and Gaia." As the away team prepared for their mission, Hill turned his attention back to the partially separated consciousnesses of Shaw and Gaia. The Nexus ship's external appearance had begun to shift, taking on characteristics that reflected both human and Sakari design elements. Suddenly, a warning klaxon sounded. Hill's eyes snapped to the long-range sensor display. Several unidentified vessels were approaching, no doubt drawn by the Nexus ship's unusual transformation. With time running short and unknown aliens closing in, Hill redoubled his efforts to stabilize Shaw and Gaia. The fate of his friends and possibly the future of the galaxy hung in the balance as the away team raced to uncover the secrets of the Progenitor outpost. As the away team raced back to the Nexus ship, their shuttlecraft laden with the mysterious Progenitor device, tension mounted on the bridge of the Odyssey. Captain Rodriguez's eyes darted between the incoming sensor data and the status updates from Dr. Hill's team. The approaching alien vessels loomed ever closer, emitting strange energy signatures that defied conventional analysis. "Captain, the alien ships are now within weapons range," Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported, his enhanced mind processing the tactical data at lightning speed. Rodriguez squared her shoulders, weighing her options. The safety of her crew and the delicate process of restoring Shaw and Gaia hung in the balance. With steely perseverance, she made her decision. "Odyssey, take up defensive positions. Form a perimeter around the Nexus ship," she ordered, her voice steady. "All power to shields and weapons. We'll buy Hill and his team the time they need. As the Odyssey and its support vessels moved into formation, the away team's shuttle docked with the Nexus ship. Dr. Hill's team wasted no time, rushing the Progenitor device to the containment field holding the Shaw-Gaia entity. The ship's corridors buzzed with frantic activity as researchers and technicians worked to integrate the alien technology into their systems. Dr. Hill's fingers flew over holographic interfaces, his brow furrowed in concentration. Calibrating the device to match the entity's energy signature, he muttered more to himself than to his team. Initiating integration sequence, now. The containment field flared with brilliant light as the Progenitor device came online. The entire ship shuddered, its structure continuing to morph and change. What had once been sleek metal and polymer now took on organic curves and pulsing, bioluminescent veins. Outside, the alien vessels suddenly halted their approach. The bridge crew of the Odyssey tensed, weapons locked and ready. "Captain," Jackson called out, his eyes wide with surprise. "They're transmitting, but it's unlike any communication protocol I've ever seen." Rodriguez turned to her communications officer. "Can we decipher it?" Before the officer could respond, Jackson's enhanced mind connected the patterns. His voice took on an otherworldly quality as he translated in real time. "Greetings, children of the stars. We are the vanguard of the progenitors. Our sensors detected the activation of our ancient outpost, drawing us to this sector. We come in peace, seeking to observe the fruits of our long-ago labors." A collective gasp rippled through the bridge. Rodriguez exchanged a look with her first officer, then tapped her comm badge. "Dr. Hill, what's the status of Shaw and Gaia?" Hill's voice came back, taut with concentration. "We're in the final stages, Captain. The Progenitor device is accelerating the separation process beyond our wildest expectations." On the Nexus ship, the containment field pulsed with increasing intensity. The merged consciousness of Shaw and Gaia, once a formless energy, began to coalesce into two distinct shapes. The ship's external appearance stabilized, settling into a breathtaking fusion of human and Sakari design elements. With a final, blinding flash, the containment field collapsed. Where there had once been a single entity of pure energy, two figures now lay motionless on the deck. Dr. Hill rushed forward, medical scanner in hand. "They're alive," he announced, relief evident in his voice. "Vital signs stable, but they're unconscious. And Captain, you need to see this." Rodriguez, having made her way to the Nexus ship, entered the chamber. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight before her. Shaw and Gaia had been restored to physical form, but they were changed. Their bodies now bore characteristics of both human and Sakari physiology, a perfect blend of their original species. "Remarkable," she breathed, then turned to Hill. "What about their minds?" Hill shook his head, still processing the data from his scans. "It's too early to say for certain, but initial readings suggest their consciousness has been successfully separated. However, there appears to be a residual telepathic link between them. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." As medical teams moved Shaw and Gaia to the infirmary, Rodriguez's comm badge chirped. "Captain," Jackson's voice came through, "the Progenitor scouts are requesting permission to board the Nexus ship." Rodriguez hesitated for a moment, then tapped her badge. "Understood. I'll meet them in the main conference room. Inform Admiral Xandar of the situation and patch him through as soon as possible." Minutes later, Rodriguez stood in the conference room, flanked by Dr. Hill and her senior staff. The air shimmered, and three beings of pure energy materialized before them. Their forms shifted and flowed, reminiscent of the Shaw-Gaia entity they had worked so hard to separate. One of the energy beings moved forward, its voice resonating directly in their minds. "We have observed your efforts with great interest. The journey of the ones you call Shaw and Gaia represents the culmination of eons of planning and hope." Rodriguez stepped forward, her posture respectful but firm. "On behalf of the United Earth Alliance and our allies, I welcome you. We have many questions, if you're willing to answer them." The Progenitor's form pulsed with what seemed to be approval. "Of course, we have much to discuss, Captain Rodriguez, but first we believe it would be beneficial for Shaw and Gaia to join us. Their unique perspective will be invaluable in the conversation to come. As if on cue, Dr. Hill's comm badge chirped. "Doctor," a medic's voice came through. "Shaw and Gaia are regaining consciousness. They're asking to speak with the captain immediately." Rodriguez nodded to Hill. "Bring them here as soon as they're able," she ordered, then turned back to the progenitors. "It seems our discussion is about to become even more interesting." The energy beings shimmered with anticipation as the crew prepared for the arrival of Shaw and Gaia. The next chapter in their incredible journey was about to unfold, with implications that would ripple across the entire galaxy.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.